Hey guys, Frank Jeeves here, inviting you to take another walk and talk with me as we talk about why The Last Jedi is actually a rather pretty decent piece of work. Anywho, though those of you who don't know me, I've actually been talking with my friends quite a bit about The Last Jedi, and I've made no bones about it as being one of the worst Star Wars films that has ever been created. I've seen subversive elements to it, which I'll get into later into another video, that I find absolutely delightfully hilarious because it kind of like undermines the very SJWism that you kind of see in these new Star Wars films. And yeah, the reason why I've been, particularly hateful of The Last Jedi has because I've seen what a lot of people have seen, which is a bunch of tokenism in there without actual substance, without actual character development for a lot of the people that are there. Now, full disclosure, I'm one of the few people that actually liked Kylo Ren from the beginning. And I liked Force Awakens. So I'm one of those people who didn't see that as a big issue that The Force Awakens was essentially a rehash of A New Hope. That was the one part I didn't like about it, but I felt like the character banter, the introduction to, new people, the overall plot line seemed to be particularly great. And I was kind of pleasantly surprised by the whole, Luke Skywalker in the end sort of thing that you get to see, and it's like, oh, no lines whatsoever. I actually thought that was kind of cute. But when I saw The Last Jedi, initially I was like, oh, this is really cool. It's got the feel of a Star Wars film, which it did. It really felt like a Star Wars film in terms of the action, in terms of the sequences between the fleet battles, which is one of the reasons why I go to see a Star Wars film. Is I go to see it to see some really good dogfights and some really good special effects. And it delivered. It delivered wonderfully well, emotionally well. Every time I saw a pilot sequence scene, I was really pulled into it. But then when it came to Luke's portrayal was extraordinarily jarring and something that, I didn't expect to see out of it. However, I personally also liked it, but for a very subversive reason. When Luke said that the Jedi must end, I, a big Star Wars fan, have always felt since the prequels that the Jedi were corrupt. And that for Luke Skywalker to actually agree with me was extraordinarily well. It was like the biggest justification ever. The greatest hero in the history of Star Wars filmmaking, probably in the history of all filmmaking, was actually agreeing with what I believed. So it was a little bit of a kind of an ego boost to be sort of vindicated by Luke Skywalker himself. However, this is where it comes down. I actually didn't like the way he was overall portrayed. I felt it was disrespectful after seeing it a second time. I felt like it still went against the character of Luke to be stuck in a mauling, shameful, completely neutered way. And then to only show up as nothing but an image rather than physically coming and confronting Ben Solo. And I really basically was like, no, these are horrible films, and I would only come up with trollish reasons as to why they were really good films. Again, that has to go back to like the anti-SJW subversion that actually exists within these films that I don't even know people are starting to realize exist in these films. I don't even know if the directors themselves realize they exist, except for maybe J.J. Abrams. But later on that one. Anywho, I'm wrong. I'm wrong about The Last Jedi being a horrible movie. I'm wrong about the portrayal of Luke Skywalker being completely bad. And there's a reason why. If you go back to the original films, there's a bit of sunlight here. If you go back to the original films, particularly Return of the Jedi, Luke Skywalker ends up confronting Obi-Wan Kenobi over why he lied about his father. And as we know, Obi-Wan Kenobi says that famous line, from a certain point of view. But there was another piece of dialogue that I was brought to my attention from another YouTube video, where they were talking, and he went on a little further to say, look, Ben, I can't kill my own father. And then Obi-Wan Kenobi says, well, then the Emperor has already won. You were our only hope. And then, Luke says, but I see there's some goodness in my father. Well, he's more machine now than man, twisted and evil. So Obi-Wan Kenobi's view of Darth Vader was that of very cynical and probably coming from a place of betrayal, as we know from the original, the prequel trilogy. But here's the trick. Basically, Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi were trying to trick Luke Skywalker into killing his own father without even realizing it. Because they figured, Darth Vader may realize that this is his son that he's actually fighting. Because he finds out his name. But they didn't figure he would ever figure out that it was his father until it was too late. Until after he slayed him. So, here we go. Now, this goes into some very interesting character development territories for Luke, because here, Luke Skywalker is confronted with the real truth of their actions, which is he was going to be tricked into killing his own father. And that's why he says, I can't kill my own father, and he has a certain degree of disappointment. But there's something about Luke. Luke is an incredibly decent human being. An incredibly decent person who always looks towards, the good in people when he sees good people. And that's why he ends up seeing good inside his father and ends up seeing how he can be redeemed. It's because of his decency as a human being and his involvement to be a good Jedi character that he does this. But here's the deal. In tossing away the lightsaber as he's about to kill his father, he actually also rejects even the Jedi ways in that particular moment. Because the Jedi wanted him to kill Darth Vader, because the Jedi ways is to destroy the Sith. So he rejects both of those lines and says, no. We are going to redeem this person here. And that's exactly what he does. He shows mercy to his own father, and then shows that an ounce of kindness that even the Jedi couldn't do. But see, here's the problem. You would say then, in The Last Jedi, when he goes up against Ben, that lack of mercy is a complete contradiction to the character. And I would say, no, it's not. And the reason why, here's the reason why. You'll be asking yourself, Kyle, why do you say such a thing that's completely absurd? Here he is, actually contradicting himself. Because he was merciful to his father, and here he is now bloodthirsty to his, his nephew. Well, first of all, Luke almost killed his father out of anger. There's always been a dark side element to Luke. Second of all, Luke continued to venerate the Jedi ways, and that means he still looked up to Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, despite the fact that they were trying to trick him, amorally or immorally so, into actually killing his own father. All right, so he's internalizing this ways of the Jedis, and he's starting to see the dark side is something that has to be feared. And he's built up a Jedi Academy. He's built up a legacy more than just his own. And on top of that, he's accepting the concept of detachment, the concept that you have to only do. You have to not be completely attached to your personal. To your personal connections. In the case of this case, in his case, Luke probably ended up developing, and highly probably, because of his veneration of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, a detachment to his own familial ties and his familial loyalties, because, again, these were things that could get in the way to the path of the light side. And so as a result of that detachment, he then had a much more stronger instinct to go, well, it doesn't matter if it's my own nephew, the dark side has to be eliminated. Because he's created this entire persona of a Jedi Master. He's delved even deeper in the Jedi ways, and those ways include destroying the dark side, no matter what. So of course, Luke then picks up the lightsaber, and in a moment of instinct is about to kill Ben. This is a natural occurrence, especially when you allow for excuses such as a certain point of view to justify lying to you in order to get you to kill your own father. When you start justifying evil in your own heart, when you justify evil of others and you accept the evil of others and try to make it the good, you internalize that and eventually cause it to fester within inside of you, and you then take on that evil yourself. And that's exactly what happened with Luke. And therefore, that is the reason why Rian Johnson actually did a really good job in the portrayal of Luke Skywalker and the portrayal of Kylo Ren. If it's anybody's fault, it's the fault of J.J. Abrams for creating this plotline in which we know that Kylo Ren was an apprentice of Luke Skywalker and that he fell to the dark side. Because then you have to justify that. And in order to give Kylo Ren, or any character for that matter in the Star Wars film, any compelling story, because, you know, they just magically appear and suddenly super powerful, Kylo has a backstory. And now he has a backstory of betrayal, which people can relate to. Which is, if your mentors and the people that you looked up to, whom barely interacted with you, who hardly took care of you, who are always off doing something bigger than you, when you're a kid and you just want to have attachment, all of them betray you in some way, shape, or form. Some of it light in the case of his father and his mother, who were probably too busy to take care of him. And in the case of Luke, a man who talks about the greatness of the light side and then does something, literally was about to do something that was just utterly dark and hideous to him. This causes them to rebel against it. It is a teenage angst, but it's deeper than a teenage angst. It's a complete betrayal of all the values that people hold dear. So, anyway, sorry about the honking there. That was some car traffic. So, I think you can see, if you listen to this argument carefully, why The Last Jedi is actually perfect when it comes to that case. When it comes to Luke, and when it comes to actually making Kylo a relatable character. So, it's going to lead up to a very interesting story for the next Star Wars film. Otherwise, there's many parts into why The Last Jedi is still bad. And I'll make another video on that one.